أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ربي اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, dear brothers and sisters. Welcome to our program. I'd like to start out by giving my condolences to the Imam of our time on the Shahadat of Bibi Fatima, Zahra, Salamu Alaiha. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa alayhi Muhammad wa ajil farjah. There was a author, his name was Ali Sharati, and he wrote a long book about Bibi Fatima, Salamu Alaiha. And when he was trying to name the book, he had some hard time finding out a name for the book. Because he didn't know what to call Bibi Fatima Salam. Would he call the book Bibi Fatima, daughter of Prophet Muhammad Salam? Would he call it the wife of Imam Ali alayhi salam? The mother of Imam Hassan and Imam Hussein alayhi salam? He didn't know what to call it. So finally, he decided to name the book Fatima. He said, there's no way to describe Bibi Fatima Salam, no easy way to describe her. So he just called the book just Fatima. Fatima is Fatima. Because he couldn't find a way to describe her. She, in everything that she had, she was so much, he couldn't find, just an easy way to describe her. And now that book, Fatima's Fatima, it's one of the most, famous books on Bibi Fatima and on her life. And it's one of the most, one of the best books out there. So, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, everyone. Inshallah, on today's program, we're going to be talking about oppression and all the different things going on. We're going to be also talking about the oppression that Bibi Fatima salam went through and all the current events. But let's start off by introducing everyone. Joining us today, we have Sister Wajiha from New York. Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum salam.
We have Brother Hadi from Missouri. Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum assalam.
And we have Brother Hussein from California. Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum assalam.
How is everyone doing today?
Doing well.
Good, thank you.
Just like how it is.
Alhamdulillah. So that's good. Everyone's doing well today. So, like we were saying, today we're going to be the topic of oppression. What is oppression, first of all? Can everyone describe, how would you describe oppression? What's the definition of oppression?
Well, if
Anyone?
when you hear oppression, you just hear or say, injustice, the inequality between, human beings, or even with, other species, and the lack of respect, the lack of freedom, the lack of love given to another person or either being, that is oppression, and not treating one as your equal. That is, you could go on and on about oppression, but when you think of oppression, you think of injustice and like just a negative atmosphere.
Yes, thank you. That's like you were saying about the dictionary definition of oppression is oppression is the cruel or unfair treatment of a group of people. That's just the basic definition of it. Synonyms are persecution, control, suffering, and abuse. So, yeah, that's to sum up the definition of oppression, what oppression means. And of course, like you're saying, you can't just put it into one certain section. It means, so much, but that's just, the basics. So speaking on the topic of oppression, what are some, does anyone know of any, what are some current examples that you see of oppression?
I think I think the most current example that would be for especially as Shia people would be the Hazara killings in Pakistan, which that was a really great form of oppression against our own people, our own Shia people, and oppression that was whatever your opinion is, it wasn't really dealt with properly, and that situation could have been avoided.
Yeah, it definitely, and also about how people aren't really at least what I'm noticing, is people aren't really paying that much attention to it, according to other things. Did anybody notice that they're not paying as much attention?
Yeah, I
Definitely,
feel
yeah.
like
And it was
the
wanted.
Well, when you're not, some people, when they're not involved, they don't really care about it.
Yeah, so that's why,
but at
of
the
course,
same
because the
time,
Shia, yeah,
yeah, at the same time, I think it's not about someone being the same religion or same caste as you. It's about it comes down at the end of the day. It comes down to we're all human and we're all made from the same creator. We're all equal, and I think people need to understand that no matter what your religious domination is, there shouldn't be any like bias against people who were brutally murdered.
yeah. At the end of the day, we're all humans. We all have to, everyone's problem is, your problem is. We should all see the problems that whatever individual group is going through. We should see this as everyone's problems because a person, like we were mentioning, people were killed. 11 people. The 11 Hazara people. They were coal miners. They were killed. So this shouldn't just be, my problem as a Shia, but it should be, someone else's problem as a Sunni, as a Christian. Everyone should see this together as an injustice going on, a sign of oppression. Yeah. Um, so, yeah, that's how it is. So, like we were talking about, do you feel people? It's also about in terms of people taking the problems of their communities seriously. If it starts in one community, for example, as a Shia, if I don't take this seriously and I think, oh, it's the Shias in Pakistan, that's not related to me, and I don't, take it seriously, I don't try to do anything about it, I think, oh, that's not my problem. Do you think that's a way that, the problem can, of course, increase?
It would just make it worse, right? Like if we ignore the situation that's happening in another place, regardless of whatever the religion they are, ethnicity they come from. If we ignore it, then slowly but surely it'll spread, right? Like wildfire. So like if the people in Pakistan, the Shia community, especially how they suffer, the Hazara community, when they're suffering and we're quiet about it, silence about it here in America, then we won't be able to stop the fires in other places that will start separately. And then when they start separately, they all come together and form one big, huge fire. And obviously, seeing fire can spread quickly, and stuff like this with oppression, it works the same way, right? Um, when we see the oppression that's happening in Pakistan, it'll slowly start to spread in India. It'll start to spread in Afghanistan, in Iran, and in neighboring countries, or either, or maybe even in Europe with the Shia community. So we have to come together and just remember at the end of the day that we're human beings, and we can't really stick, I guess, line. Then we failed. We failed as a community, as a whole, as human beings.
What's the most basic thing that someone can do? What's the easiest thing that someone can do
I think
to,
that
show support to the oppressed?
I think just the easiest thing that someone could do is just acknowledge the problem and not avoid the problem and not say, "Oh, this isn't a problem." I think if you acknowledge the problem, it goes a long way because then you'll realize that you have to make a change. I think acknowledgement of the actual issue is the most important thing.
Of course, because
Also,
even, yeah,
when if somebody doesn't acknowledge it, then the people, they'll think you don't care. Nobody cares about it, and maybe the people that are killing, they'll start doing more because nobody cares about it.
yeah, one thing I see is that, for example, people will look at, for example, what went on with the Shias. And some people actually try to downplay it. Like you were saying that, for example, they'll say, oh, well, there's a problem with the Shias. Oh, well, there's something bigger going on over here. And they try to see that as a way as this, this thing doesn't matter. What would you respond to that? How would you respond to that?
Well, back to what Hadi was saying, right? Brother Hadi, sorry. Like how, if we spread the awareness, educate them on the matter, and say that how can you say this is not a problem or this is not oppression, right? First of all, let's go down to the basic. What do you define as oppression? What do you define problem? Then you explain to them, okay, this is what's happening in this community or in this place. Then do you not see the problem or the oppression? And then you make them question about the situation that, okay, based on your definition of oppression and a problem, this should be following the what your definitions are, right? So I believe that if we educate them, we tell them, and we spread the awareness, and then just bring reality to the table and say that don't listen to everything you hear on the news. Do your own research about it and ask questions from the communities that are being affected, and that'd be a great way to spread the information.
Yeah, of course. Whatever little thing somebody can do, because it really makes a difference. Even if somebody, you just open, say, an article, right? You just open a news article, and it says a specific thing about, say, Shias, and you don't do any other research besides that. You only have a quarter of the picture. You don't have, enough. So even this goes on with, the different oppressions going on. If you don't do enough research about something, you don't, try to make yourself understand the situations going on and how people are being oppressed, then what's going to happen is you're, like I said, you're only going to have half of the picture because you're not going to care about it because you don't understand the full situation. um, does anyone have any personal experiences of oppression? Sometimes it's somebody did injustice to you. No one wants to answer, I see. Any personal
I guess I'll
experiences.
answer.
Yeah.
If anyone wants to answer before me, they're welcome to.
Um,
Go, Hadi.
you can go. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I think
Go ahead.
a lot of Muslims, especially the young Muslims in America, face some type of oppression, which would be racism. So I feel like most of us have probably faced that racism, the racism against Islam, the racism against the prejudices and the biases against Islam of like living in American society, Western society. So I think the level that we face oppression, or I face oppression, is really low because it's nothing compared to what, like, especially the Hazara people went through.
I
Yeah,
mean, but
the
like, see,
oppression
like,
that.
um, there'd be different, experiences and different definitions of what people been through. Like, um, they don't want to feel invalidated with their feelings, right? But of course, we can't just oppression is oppression. It'll be like different levels of oppression, right? Like starting at school level, then high school, and then into the community, at your job, then as a whole in the nation. What happening with the Hazara is whole as a nation. With like with us individual, it'll be like at a sort of lower level. But like with me personally, like alhamdulillah, I haven't faced too much, um, I guess injustice or oppression. But I guess oppression in the form that um, when I went to H&M once, this like I was looking at these dresses and this one lady, she just looked at me up and down and said like just cough, like made like a remark, like under her breath, and I
Wow.
knew that she was judging me in a way that was, oh yeah, okay, she's wearing this and she's thinking about wearing this. um so like there's like different levels
Also,
of
that
like coming around. But yeah, personally at that level, looked at in a wrong way, or people just glancing at me or getting up from the subway seats because I'm sitting there. So
yeah. Also, with that story, they might have also been showing disrespect and like disgust, as oh look at them, how she's wearing like a hijab, and now they're just not wearing a hijab and they're just showing their hair and they're just walking freely. But when somebody's wearing hijab, then they start staring at them as in some kind of disrespect. But there's no difference between one person and the other, except one person's wearing a hijab and one's not. There's no difference.
Yeah, and that's in terms of,
yeah,
like we were talking about, the thing with. Yeah.
sorry.
Something to
You
say?
could go. No, I just said that at the end we're just all human beings.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah,
And
that's
also,
true.
like, with yeah, in terms of like minorities, because Muslims in America, we are, of course, the minorities. And of course, for you, in terms of Muslims who wear hijab, because there's a lot of Muslims, but there's not a lot of practicing Muslims. Obviously it's a minority compared to the other religions in America. So in terms of that, it's the same thing with like we were saying about the Hazaras. It's the Sunnis think, oh, why do we care? They're Shias. Why should we care? That's not our problem. And of course, people here are saying look down upon Muslims. But it shouldn't be like that. It should be everyone understands the problems. You just see it as oppression. There is no, black and white. There's no any of this. It's just if something goes on, if oppression, somebody's doing injustice, someone's being treated unfairly, then we should just see it as that on the basic level. And that's the same thing. Yeah, that goes with everything really. Treating people as equals. If somebody has a problem, you have to see it as it's your problem and not it's all just their problem. Um, what's another example? Another example I think of when you think of the idea of people ignoring it because it doesn't affect them. It's of course the coronavirus, and what happened with it was in the beginning when it started. I mean, I can even remember myself in the month of it was February, I think, when everything really started. And when it started, I saw an article that said, "Oh yeah, new virus developing in I think where was it? I think
Wuhan.
Wuhan,
I think it
China.
was
Yeah, Wuhan.
Wuhan.
Yeah, yeah. So it says new virus developing in Wuhan, China. So I was thinking, oh, that's over there. I'm over here, so that's it's not my problem. Like, unfortunately, that's going on, but it's not going to affect me. And then the next day it was Italy. So I was like, oh, it's in Italy. That's still over there. And then it came closer and closer. And then, of course, when it got to America, and I was in one state, and I think New York. I think New York was that where the virus started or had the most cases? I think.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think
definitely.
it was
It
where it
was.
started.
Yeah, so in New York, right? So then I'm thinking, oh, it's in New York. That's not my problem. And then it comes exactly where I am, and people I know, people we know are getting the virus and this and that. So then you think, oh, now you understand. But by that time, it's already too late.
Um, I would like
Yeah.
to add on to the discussion. There's a
Yeah.
quote by I believe Imam Ali, is that everyone in this world is either your equal in faith, I mean your brother in faith, or your equal in humanity. And so I think we all need to like look at this and just kind of like look through the world in this perception that we're all equal at the end of the day. And Imam Ali, that quote holds so much meaning that literally it could, no matter if they're Muslim or not Muslim, everyone matters in their own respects. And I think just respecting everyone and considering everyone as your equal is just something really, it's really important because you should never think you're better than anyone else.
Yeah. Did anybody talking about that? Did anyone see? I think a result of the Hazaras. They made something called Shia Lives Matter. Did anybody see that?
No, I didn't see. But there have been like remarks of that, especially coming out ever since this Hazara community incident happened. Um,
Yeah.
but I honestly, I saw this coming though. This like Shia Lives Matter. Someone talked about it. I think on a social media platform. I forgot which one. And he got backlashed a lot, like a lot. People were like, "No, all
Oh.
Muslim lives," stuff like that. And then I was like, "You guys aren't understanding the point. That is that the Shias have faced a lot of oppression because they're a minority for over centuries, not even years or decades, but centuries. We've been facing oppression, and because we haven't talked out about it, we have also become, the oppressors of our own community. If we talked about, the oppression that happened and not let this thing be forgotten in some community, then maybe there would be more education, more awareness about how, yeah, she is oppressed. And because of all, the bloodshed and violence that's happened in history. But we gotta be better. in this generation and make sure that in the Muslim community there's an awareness that Shia oppression has been happening over centuries and it needs to stop.
Yeah, I think to add on
Also, in
to
terms
what
of,
Sister
yeah,
Wajia said, I feel like it hurts a lot of people's egos, especially like with the stuff that, for example, goes on in America, what's going on in America right now, like the Black Lives Matter, All Lives Matter. I feel like it kind of hurts people's egos when they see one like someone some a group different than them. They see them being highlighted. They're like, oh well, our people are being oppressed too. So why isn't that being spoken about? And I feel like people kind of mislead the point of what those movements actually mean.
It should be all
Yeah,
lives
exactly.
matter.
Like if you of like
Because when
the what blacks have been through slavery and even in America until now, the Jim Crow law and like the oppression with like not teaching them with education when all black people were free. Um, I think it's like they suffered a lot. They suffered a lot just to be treated equally here in America, even though they were like the one of the backbones of making America, and which no one can deny. Um, so like it just it just becomes like so hard. It's like we built this country, we've been here, and yet still you won't recognize us as your equals, which is why there's so much outrage and riots. I guess today that's happening.
well,
and that's how,
there,
of course, all of the.
well, there's a lot of different races and different societies and different groups. So you can just put it all in all lives matter, because otherwise you can make a million of them. You can just create another group and name it
I mean,
again.
that's obviously, yeah, that's a different topic, of course. But in terms of, that's why of course, the individual thing, I think it makes a bigger difference. Of course, in today's society, that's why you have so many of these different movements. That's why I think if they had just Shia Lives Matter, they just made it like that, it would be taking away from everything else. If you had just Shia Lives Matter, so that's why. No, if you had just Muslim Lives Matter, is what I meant to say. If you have just Muslim Lives Matter, it really takes away from everything else. So that's why if you have something more specific, then people can look into that exact problem. Because like you were saying, for so many years, Muslims have been oppressed. There's been so much, and especially Shias. So that's why it's more important if we want people to understand exactly what's going on. If we want people to, like we said, get informed about the situation. That's why. And that's the same thing
There's a
with, like you were saying about the, yeah.
sorry, yeah, go on.
Oh yeah, I was gonna say that's the same thing. Like you were saying, Brother Sane was saying with the All Lives Matter, is I think it makes it a little too general. You know, like there's so many different groups that have been oppressed. Whether you want to talk about the Jews or you want to talk, of course, the African American. All these people have so many different problems. Everyone has problems around the world. But if I just say, I just put it in one group, it's kind of too general. That's why I think it's a better idea if they have, like I said, these individual things, and that's how people will be able to be, informed about what's going on. So people see, whatever Shia Lives Matter, and they'll understand what's going on with, the Hazaras. They'll see all that stuff.
Yeah, I
It's a very
agree. Because
basic. So like if in a college or like anywhere, right, we have a group of Muslims and the leaders are majority Sunnis, right? Then there's no like when the Shias are trying to get into the positions of leading in that group or in that club, there's not much room or space to occur. And then there's like a separate one that where they can also voice their opinion, and that's where a separate group forms where they voice themselves. And so the thing is that in the community as a whole, some voices aren't highlighted because they're a minority, and that's what causes the problem. No one walks together. They just see whatever is the majority that they walk with that.
Especially in today's society, I see that mostly what happens is it's all just about like one line, one word, to get people's attention. People don't want to see, if you have a whole long story and you have a huge thing about, oh, why you should listen to this, why they should care about it, nobody's going to listen. But if you just have, one single word, like just Shia Lives Matter, just a single line, and then people can look into it and they can further understand. That's like, did you get, the Who is Hussein?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Organization,
Who is
yeah.
Hussein? Yeah, Who is Hussein, .org, I think. Yeah, I went to some of those, what's it called? The walk, where they walk, you do what's it called? March? I'm not sure what it's called exactly, but yeah, I
Jalous?
went to some of those. Yeah, Jalous, that's it. And you see
Oh, the
different
procession.
people, yeah, procession, yeah, that's what it's called. I was waiting for that. Yeah, so what it is, you're walking and you're holding, the flag, this and that, but for Imam Hussein alayhi salam. And of course, there's people in their cars who was looking and was like, oh, why are all those people over there? And then they see that sign that says whoishussein.org, just like that. And they say, oh, okay, they search it up on their phone, here you go. Now they know about Imam Hussein alayhi salam. So that's how it is in this world. Everything, it has to be simple in our current day. So if you can make something nice and simple, you can get someone to see, just like I said, a single line. That's an easier way to, get people
Yeah,
aware about the
all
thing
lives
going on.
matter is much easier to put everything in. But yes, I agree that when it's one group, it focuses on that one group about Shias, and then everyone gets it. But with all lives matter, it'll just be all, and all the other groups will be neglected, but it'll just be all. So, but it should be all as maybe like humanity, like the world, as in all species, should be should matter.
To
Yeah,
quite
so I
on to
mean, like,
say Hussein. There was one procession in New York that happened with who was Hussein organization, and the people who were watching, there was this one person who was actually mocking some of the men who were mothering, and it was just sometimes some people have a diet and they want to search who is Hussein and type it in, but some people just see it as a show and just mock it. So it's either the two.
I think it just comes down to arrogance and ignorance. That people either they don't either they're just so caught up in their own beliefs and their egos, or there's just hatred in their heart.
Yeah, I mean, see, that's the thing I think that is the real problem. Why oppression still occurs today is because people believe, people who have privilege, people who have peace and prosperity in their communities or in their homes, they don't really have to care much about the wildfire that's spreading around, right? They're like, well, we're on a high land, we're in a high level, we're in the fires down here, we're safe. But because of that illusion that some have, the world gets crumbling down.
yeah, who was it? I think Prophet Noah alayhi salam. His son was in, Prophet Noah's son. He was standing on like a high place, and Prophet Noah said to him that there's going to be a flood, and come with me on the boat. But he didn't want to. He said, "Oh, I'm already here. I'm in a high place. The water can't get to me." What happened? It flooded, and Allah Subhanahu wa Taala told Prophet Noah alayhi salam, he said, "Just leave him." And then of course the flood happened, and he died along with everyone else. So that's just the basic ignorance. I mean, you could see a sign. You could hold up a sign that says, "Please donate to sick, dying children," right? A basic sign, just to, and obviously, you and me will think, "Oh, obviously, those people need help, whatever." But there could be somebody who drives by and he thinks, "Oh, look at those losers over there. They want me to give money to some, dying kids." So it's not, like you're talking about. It's just the basic ignorance. You can't expect everybody to care. You can't expect everyone to, want to do research. But at least if you have some people, at least you can just make a basic difference.
But one thing that we can do is that pray for the whole world to have Hidayat, because Hidayat is inevitably in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's hands. So when we pray for that, when we say that, Ya Allah, please give them Hidayat, and we do it from, truly from the bottom of our heart, then Allah obviously, inshallah, will give Hidayat to people who He sees, worthy. But at the end of the day, that's what we can do when we see people who are think ignorant by their own choice.
Yeah, and it also goes into, because as we know, we're all waiting for the appearance of our 12th Imam, may Allah hasten his appearance. And until that time when our 12th Imam comes, everything around us is going to get worse and worse and worse. Society is going to keep going down until inevitably, when it's at its worst, that's when our 12th Imam will come. Um, so that's the thing with, like you were talking about, all the different people, this and that. Yeah, all we can do right now is just pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, guides the right people, and whoever at the end of the day gets saved. And inshallah, we're of those people who are saved, and we're, companions of the 12th Imam alayhi and his parents. And, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is pleased with us. That's all we can, try to do.
The thing is that with the community today or with the world today, it's funny how we think we're so progressed today, right? Like how everyone's like, oh, we all have the freedom, we all have awareness, we all are, great in technology right now. But if you truly see it, we're deteriorating as humans even more, which is really scary. Especially in 2020, I think that a lot of people reflected on that, on how we have, as humans, been careless about one another, how people can just care more about themselves rather than the people around them, and just I don't know, just lost their humanity, lost their basic ideology of what's it's like to be a good human being, kind, and a good neighbor. Um, so yeah, I guess that's what I guess we should reflect on that even more as we're coming to a new era, which is a little scary.
Even if we look back, like, let's say 30 years from now, in like 1990, you look back then, even people back then, of course, they had their own struggles, they had their own problems. And of course, back then, what did they say to themselves? They said, oh, it's horrible now. All of these things that are going on, it's so tough for us. And then you go fast forward to what we're doing now, and it's 10 times worse than that. But of course, like you were saying, it's going to just keep going down and down and down until eventually, the 12th Imam is going to come.
But
So,
you see, like how like we're closer
yeah.
to it now compared to like how like 10 years ago. And it's the thing. It's coming at such a speed and it's getting so fast before your eyes. It's like you don't know what to do anymore to help repair the damage, help rebuild the community, help see people and come back onto the right path. Right. I think that's the struggle of today right now with Muslim communities and communities around the world.
Yeah, even in the
I feel
last
like that's
year, I
very
mean, there's just, yeah.
yeah. I feel like that's very eye opening. That like society is slowly, it's literally slowly becoming worse as time goes on, and like the humanity is leaving people's souls. Like people aren't people are really less. There's like less emotion, and there's less caring for others and caring for the things that actually matter. Because life is really short, and I feel like, especially because of technology and social media, people have been just living their lives in this perception of, especially like and money and just acceptance from others. When all you need is a good heart and you need God, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And I feel like those two things are what helps you live a good life. But the perception of a good and successful life has been like changed to like, yeah, I have a big house, I have these cars, I have this and that. So I feel like there's a lot of that changed people's perception.
I think it's like
Yeah,
Inception, right?
also,
All this world is already an illusion, right? It's stated by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Imam Islam, and hadiths and the Quran. And then when it's social media, it's another illusion. It's like illusion upon illusion and of our own illusion with an illusion. Like it's like illusion, illusion, illusion. Like we're getting so deep within illusions of that we're happy, we're at peace, when we're really not. That is actually the problem, right? And we can't come out of it no matter how hard we try. And that's why, there's certain mental illnesses that are taking over the new generation because we can't get out of this cycle we're in. We're in this deep, deep hole, and we could see the ladder, but we can't reach it. And it's really hard to just climb one stair or like one step. So like it's just this inevitable, bottomless pit we're in right now. And we have to realize that we're in an illusion and we need to get out and we need to save humanity and get them aware that, hey, whatever it is, at the end of the day, it's your good deeds Either you're Muslim or non-Muslim. It's your good deeds, your good actions that get you a little peace in life.
And like you mentioned, Inception. Another example you can see from that is in re- people right now, they don't really understand, like you're saying, what's real and what's not. I feel like there's a lot of confusion with that. Like you were saying in the examples of the social media, everything like that, people's concept of reality is a little, changed. They don't understand, like some people have a straight path. They know exactly what they have to do. Like inshallah, as Muslims, we understand that our goal is to please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's what our goal has to be, and to get to heaven. But some people don't understand that. Some people have a different approach. Their goal isn't straight. They don't know what their purpose on this planet is. They don't understand that. And with the example of Inception, is that there was like a lot going on in that movie. I didn't really understand. Like for example, the ending. I couldn't really tell what was real and what was not. The ending was pretty confusing. I couldn't really understand it.
Yeah, like at the end of the day, it was like
Exactly.
your own perception, right? Like what you thought was the reality. It could have been someone else's illusion or someone else's reality as well. So I guess that we all have our own perception, our own perspectives that we have to look at and see what is reality and what is illusion, because there's a clear difference between the two, you know.
Yeah, and even I think the guy who made that movie, what was it?
Christopher
Christopher
Nolan.
Nolan, the
Christopher
guy who
Nolan.
made the movie. Yeah, the guy, he said himself that it's really, the ending is really how you perceive it. It's just according to what you think it is. There's not like a set ending, one thing to happen. It's like it's up to your own perception.
It's like a controversial ending.
Yeah, yeah. One side of people say it ended this way, the other side, that way. Um,
I saw this one quote by I think some sheikh, and he said that Allah, like, He doesn't need our worship. Allah doesn't gain anything from our worship. It's actually us who need the worship, who needs to worship, because it helps us at the end of the day. Everything, all our good deeds, they're helping us. Allah doesn't need this. Allah is the supreme creator. He doesn't need any of these good deeds. But it comes down to what we need, what our soul needs. So I feel like if you look at life from what your soul needs, and rather than what your like worldly desires are, I feel like you can get pretty far in your perception.
Also,
Yeah, there's a
to add
boundary.
on to what Hadi said before, was also people get some kind of glory out of possessions. Like if you have a big house or cars, as worldly possessions, but your real goal is supposed to be close, getting closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Definitely.
yeah,
And
for
like
some
there's like
reasons,
we made like a huge I guess walls or like layers between our soul and like ourselves, right? We filled it with all these negative stuff, with illusions again, and like with just it's just hard nowadays to get and reach your soul and reach for your inner peace, because we filled it with all this negativity and thinking that it was good for us and healthy for us when in fact it was.
people for some, I mean, we as people, for some reason, the common misconception is that people really treat their soul as separate from their body. They treat it as separate from themselves. Like you think of your soul as some secondary thing. It's just over there. But people don't understand that at the end of the day, your soul is the only thing that matters. How you take care of your soul. Of course, there's the physical health. You go to the gym, you lift some weights. But then there's also the spiritual health. And reading your namaz, reading Quran, doing good deeds, stuff like this is feeding your soul. And in the next world, whatever the result of that, whatever the good deeds that we did, in the next world is we're going to see the results of that. Could either be a beautiful angel that's going to protect us, or it could be something that's actually going to hurt us, and it's going to be a burden on us in the next world. So, inshallah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala helps us that we make the most of our lives.
there's this very beautiful quote I would like to add, is that not a quote, but actually a tradition stated by Imam Jafar Sadiq alayhi salam. This one person will rise from his grave on the day of judgment, and there will be this light protecting him from like these negative things, and then he'll be wondering what it is, and then he'll ask him, "Who are you?" He then will reply, "That happiness that you gave others." So even the basic thing like making someone smile will help protect you on the day of judgment, on the final day of judgment. And it's so beautiful because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sees everything, accepts everything and rewards every single little thing that which we don't think is even worth rewarding. So that I think we should take advantage of that and become closer and more like, I guess, good human beings, right? At the end of the day.
Standing up for oppression will also, of course, help us in the next world in terms of, you know, helping our soul. Standing up for oppression is also that's also a huge thing.
Definitely, because it's like it's not easy standing up to oppression. Everyone knows that who goes out, who's seen it on TV, seeing other people stand up for the oppression, right? It's not easy speaking up for your rights. It's not easy because there's gonna be a lot of criticism. There's gonna be a lot of hate. A lot of people will get more violence on you for some reason, asking for your basic rights. So it's not easy to make sure your voice is heard. But when we do that, then we play a huge role in society, like the domino effect. When we do it, then it'll surely affect somewhere or someone else that will create a wave of change, a positive change. And that's what we do when we fight oppression. And especially what Imam Hussein alayhi Islam did when fighting at Karbala, one of the main things was he fought the oppression. When some scholars or some, debaters say that, oh, Imam Hussein alayhi Islam didn't have to do that. But the message of Imam Hussein alayhi Islam is so deep that no, that when you fight oppression, it will lead to victory, no matter how small your group is or how of a minority you are. And I think with a number of 72 companions says a lot and is more alive than any other army in the world.
And 1400 years later, those 72 companions, they changed the world compared to the thousands of, soldiers of Yazid's army. Those 72 companions are the ones that people remember today, and people, do matam for them. We read majlises for them. So, if you do the right thing and you stick up for, what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us to do, and you stick up for what's right, at the end of the day, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will raise your position in front of, even, of course, in the terms of the next world, and also in terms of, people, what the people think of you. People think that money and power and, all of these different things is what, get people to like you. But at the end of the day, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one who does it. He's the one who makes people think of you if they want to think that you're a good person. He's the one who makes them think that you're a bad person. But of course, some of that you also do to yourself. Let's be honest here. Yeah. So
Also, like as in the story when Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when the time of his birth, the Kaaba, I forgot what person, he wanted to burn down the Kaaba because he wanted people to come to his mosque or
that was
something. Abraha, yeah.
Abraha, yeah.
He
Yeah,
wanted
Abraha.
to destroy the Kaaba with his elephants and everything. To destroy the Kaaba, and so the pilgrims would come to his palace, or I think it was temple.
Yeah, and his temple was like 1,000 times better, right? He was like made of gold or something.
Yeah, and then so he came with his elephants and everything, his huge army of elephants and everything. Then a bunch of birds, these tiny birds. I mean, you know how like a small bird, referring to like a small group of some birds, small birds came with little like pebbles, like rocks,
Like a shield.
pebbles. yeah, like hot rocks to protect the Kaaba, and so they started throwing it at the elephants, and then these entire armies got destroyed just by these small birds. So we can be those birds and fight against oppression, even if we're these little tiny birds fighting against oppression. You should still try and do your part.
Yeah, that's true. Like one little thing makes a difference. Like Sister Regina was talking about the domino effect. Is if one person does something, it could start a whole different thing. Um, you can also use that example for like Martin Luther King, because Martin Luther King Day is coming up. I think it's on
The 18th?
Monday, I think,
Monday.
right? Yeah, Monday. Yeah, so Martin Luther King, he started a whole movement just by himself. This one man who was giving these speeches. He was fighting for against oppression, fighting for what's right. And even so many years later, after his death, we still remember him today. And he was a huge part in fighting against oppression. So I have a saying from Imam Ali alayhi salam about what he said about oppression. Now let's say it like this. Um, okay, here's the question: if someone is doing injustice, right? Who do you think, if someone's doing injustice and there's also the victim, the person he's doing injustice to, who do you think is going to be punished? Realistically, who do you think is going to get punished?
The person who's
Obviously, the
doing justice.
Yeah, obviously the person who's doing injustice. But what if the person who's the victim, the person who's being oppressed, what if he doesn't do anything about it and he just accepts it? What happens then?
well, it's the saying of stimulates person who is silenced in the form of in the face of oppression is also the oppressor.
Yeah, exactly. So here's the saying from Imam Ali alayhi salam. And the saying is, the oppressor and the oppressed will both suffer in the hereafter. The oppressor for his tyranny and the oppressed for accepting it. So Imam Ali alayhi salam is saying that not only will the person doing the oppression, not only will the person committing oppression, not only will he be punished, but also the person who stood by and let it happen, didn't do anything about it. So what do you think about that?
I
When
think there's a lot of
also,
examples of that, especially with school bullying. Like, how many of us can say that we stood up for someone just being bullied at school? And that's just
Good
something
point.
that we should all think about. I think we should all think about how even we don't have to go and stand up for these for people who countries who are oppressing people. We can stand up for someone in our own school or someone in our own community or someone in the supermarket. You see some oppression. If you just stand up for something, I feel like that's what Imam Ali means.
even if like somebody, I forgot there was like this, at a restaurant, some people, since they were like black or something, they made them pay in advance for their food, because they thought they were just gonna get the food, then they were gonna run off with it.
Oh yeah, I know what you're talking about. Wasn't that was on a TV show, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, did you guys see that? I think it was called What Would You Do?
Yeah, I saw that episode because it
Yeah,
actually
there's a
happened
there's a
to
lot of
another.
yeah, go ahead.
It actually happened to another person in real life. That's why they made that scenario. Like, if it actually happened in, in a controlled situation, like, how would you react to it? Because I don't know where I saw it on the news here in New York that this one couple or this one man, he was sitting by himself, I think, with his, and waitress or waiter asked them to pay in advance to became, and they were like, why aren't the other people getting treated this way? Why am I the only one? And so then they made a whole episode on that, on what you do, or what would you do, which is yeah, I mean, it's horrible, honestly speaking.
Yeah, I think all of the episodes that they make on What Would You Do, the show, all of the episodes are based off of real life events. I think usually when it starts, it says, "Oh, this happened to this person in Oregon," or usually says it.
Yeah, it shows
So
it on the news.
these are real life examples. Yeah.
When it happens at like the beginning of each episode, it shows like a news, like a video of it happening usually.
Okay, here's another
Oh,
example.
okay.
Here's another question. What do you do if someone doesn't realize they're being oppressed? What if someone is being oppressed or someone's being bullied, but they don't know it?
I think that happens a lot of times with students in school, right? Like when, for example, when a kid asks you for your lunch money and you quiver and you get scared and you just give it. And, there are other friends or other people who are bystanders look at you and say, why did you give it? You're like, well, I just, I didn't want to get hurt or stuff like that. In some scenarios, not even like that. In other scenarios that when, you have to just do whatever the bully says. You don't realize that you're being oppressed, or you think it's normal, right? Because the bully does it with other students, stuff like that, or other class fellows. Think that's when you don't realize that you're being oppressed. And I think that as a person who's not being oppressed or not being bullied should speak up and say that, hey, you're being bullied. This is not right. This is not normal. And if you need help or like if you need support, I'm there for you. Even just saying that helps a lot.
Or
Of
also,
course, because
it's
it's
not
not.
really because they don't realize it. It's because they're too scared to do anything. Because they think
Yeah, of course, but it could also be.
if I do something, then it'll happen to me. That's why they don't do anything.
Yeah, of course, but it could
But
also
I
be
feel,
the opposite of that.
yeah, I feel like it could be the
Go ahead.
opposite of that. Someone could very well like not even know that they're being oppressed. And I feel like especially with social media, like online bullying is such like a big thing these days, and like there's incidents of like people literally killing themselves because of what someone said online. So I feel like we need to really look into that, make sure that we're not being oppressed without knowing.
Yeah, there's a lot of examples of that because what could be a joke to somebody could be, very serious to someone else. Like even someone online, you could just say it as a joke. Obviously, people, if you're saying it online, not everyone understands the way you're saying something. You could be saying something, sarcastically. They don't know that.
I think a big problem, especially in the Desi community that I've seen, is that relative. When some students they believe that or they feel passionate about the arts, or like maybe um, other fields in the science other than becoming a doctor or engineer. I think that relatives in the Desi community, or maybe in other communities, but I've seen it mostly in Desi, they like shut you down. They mock you. They're like, oh, well, you're not that smart. Oh, you're not that good at drawing. No, you can't do it. It's just better off to do whatever we say, or like, we help you in. And I think that's one kind of bullying that's happening in our communities, in our, like, being Pakistani, that's happening, that I've seen in our community with our youth. Some students get bullied, or some kids get bullied into like not dreams suppressed because their relatives don't like it, or it doesn't align with their values or goals too, or with their their izzat, their name, their honor. Um, like if you're into drawing, they would undermine you and say, well, it's not that good, even though it's going to be a really good, they won't appreciate you for what you've done, the hard work you put into it. Or photography, they'll be like, oh, well, you just point a camera to a tree and call it photography. That's not photography. I mean, you
Yeah,
can't
taking a
just
picture, that doesn't take
undermine
skill.
a person. Yeah, I mean, you can't just say they're very passionate about it, because they're famous photographers around the world who have done or led a great life. They've done covers for the National Geographic, for Time magazine, and they're big names. And I think that we shouldn't just label or put our children boxes of being doctors or engineers, but open them up to more other diverse fields that which builds impact upon the community in a positive way. Like just being like a head management of the in a hospital, rather than becoming a doctor, is also a very good role and job to play in the community. You're taking care of a whole hospital, taking care of a whole department. If you're not a doctor, and they just undermine that. I think that's also a form of oppression that we don't see as much, and we just let it happen to us. But those who are educated, who broke away from that and still, achieve their dreams, they then have to speak up and create awareness that, hey, what you're doing is not right and you're being bullied.
You shouldn't care about what
Yeah,
other people
I
think.
think that's a yeah, I think that's a big problem. Like Brother Hussein just said, we shouldn't care about what people think. I mean, I don't think it's that simple because the people who are like our community, we see them as our elders. We see them as like people who are older than us. We should respect them. That's like our perception of them. And I think when people who we quote unquote respect, when they say something, I feel like we tend to take it to some like someone you respect or someone you love. If they say it's something to you, I feel like you take that to your heart a little more than if someone just off the street said it to you. So I think we need to
Yeah,
know
of
that
course.
we should respect others' opinions, like especially the ones that we love. But there should definitely be like dialogue. You shouldn't be afraid to talk with your parents or talk with whoever this person, your family member is, and explain to them like this is my passion. We literally only live once, so why not do something that you have a passion for?
Yeah, if you shouldn't really. I mean, yeah, I agree to what Brother Javi said, but you shouldn't really care about what other people say. Like if you're doing like a subject like drawing or anything else, really, like photography, you shouldn't really care about if you're passionate about it. You shouldn't really care what other people say if they're like putting it down and saying that's a bad subject. Do something else. You should say what you're passionate to. Because if you like to draw, you should draw. You shouldn't really get neglected. You shouldn't neglect it just because other people think it's not cool if they don't like it.
Yeah, I definitely agree. But like at the end of the day, right? Like even if we wish that we just ignored it, there's always going to be nature this need for love, create and attention, right? Especially from our parents, from our siblings, from our our elders. Um, I wish it was that simple, the brother was saying that where we could ignore it, but unfortunately, because of the hatred that we're built with, we at some point and level we a little bit of affection can go a long way. Um, and I guess that's what sometimes gets people down is that when they see the whole world, like me, their whole world, like their family against them, on the thing that they love. Because what the thing that you love, you also want the people who you love to respect it. You want the thing that you love and the people who you love to come together and respect your stuff and admire it. But when that doesn't happen, then it kind of tilts the scales. And yeah,
Yeah, but
Yeah,
if
it's
it's like that, and if somebody doesn't like it and they don't respect it, if you get good at it, then they'll show some respect. If they see how good it is and they like it, then they'll start to show you some respect about it. So if they say they don't like it, then if you ignore it and you keep doing it and you get very good at it, and then if you're like drawing and it looks very good, then they'll start to be more passionate about it, and they'll say, "Wow, that looks really good." Then they'll start like warming up to you.
but to your point, it's not always because at the end of the day, somebody could want to do something and they couldn't be necessarily good at it. It's not always that somebody does something and they're like so good at it. Somebody could be a photographer and they could be horrible. But, at the end of the day, just at least, giving them support, at least, saying if that's what they want to do, then,
yeah, cheer them on.
Well, I said could.
Like build and become better, rather than break them down and make them just another unhappy adults in this world.
and like everyone was talking about, another aspect of, oppression isn't just, the big things. It's not just about what's going on with a country, a huge country. It could be as little as, even saying something to someone in terms of, bullying. It could be just saying just one thing to someone. Because it does work that if somebody says something good to you, right? If somebody on the street or one of your family members, they say something good to you, it could make you feel good the entire day. That could make your day. You could be happy and everything. it's the exact opposite. That if somebody says something mean to you, then you're gonna, you'll remember it for the entire day, and you're gonna have a bad day. So it's just as easy as that. That even, doing little things like this, that even, like you were saying, smiling at someone, or, saying hello to someone, or saying salam to someone is what you should say. It makes a big difference.
Yeah, asking someone if you're okay when you see them getting a little down when you usually see them, it makes a huge difference. And that's why, smiling is sunnah, because you never know who might smile back at you and say, hey, someone smiled at me, someone noticed me, and I feel, great. Like just being noticed by even a stranger can feel so much great, than being, noticed by your everyday people because they're, someone who you don't notice. And in today's community, especially with like some social media platforms, some abuse it when they don't get the I guess attention, or they get neglected from their home, and then they go on social media and try to get it from there, which obviously there's going to be some consequences, or they're not going to feel as happy as when they get it at home or from people that they are in surroundings and that they love. Um, so yeah, just noticing somebody could make a huge difference.
Yeah, even when like somebody's being mean to you, and even if you give them like if they're having a bad day or something, and you just give them a smile, then it kind of brightens their mood.
Yeah, and talking about, like you're saying, a smile, just a simple thing is a smile. It was, of course, the sunnah of Prophet Muhammad, like you said. And how well we see how well Prophet Muhammad treated perfect strangers that he's never seen before. How well he treated his enemies. That lady who threw garbage at him. He was so nice to her every single day. He visited her when she was sick. So you look how well he treated other people. Just imagine how well he treated his own family. Bibi Fatima salam alaiha, and Bibi Khadija, and all of his relatives, Imam Ali alayhi salam. And going back to, like we were mentioning about Bibi Fatima salam alaiha, and the different lessons we can learn from her and the oppression she went through. And Bibi Fatima salam alaiha, of course, her oppression was, you know, different things. But the main thing that I notice when I see it is, of course, Bibi Fatima salam alaiha. One of the main things that, examples of oppression that happened to her was with the area of Fadak, which Fadak was, it was a garden that, I think, who was it? I'm not sure the exact people gave it to Prophet Muhammad. And Prophet Muhammad, when he died, he gave it to her as her, inheritance. And what happened was, um, by the people at the time, like Abu Bakr and all those people, they didn't want to give her that. They didn't want to give her the Garden of Fadak. They didn't want to give it to her because they said that, oh, it's the property of a prophet. So a prophet doesn't keep any property. Anything the prophet has goes to the people. But Prophet Muhammad has specifically said to give that to her. So the main thing that I saw about this, if anyone else would like to add about their, the lessons that they find, but the main thing I found was about how the people who, oppressed Bibi Fatima, salam alaiha, well, the people who oppressed Bibi Fatima, salam alaiha, um, you know, were Prophet Muhammad's own companions. It was his own people, the people who were behind Prophet Muhammad. But as soon as he died, they just left him. And that's his daughter, but they still want to give her, the land that was hers. They were doing injustice to the Prophet's daughter. And that's the main thing I see, is that these people were Muslims. Does anyone else have anything to add?
Yeah, that is one of the biggest signs of oppression, really. We were talking about other stuff, but that is the main, really, oppression.
Yeah, in your
Because
own groups.
that
Yeah.
was Prophet Muhammad's land, and he gave it to her when he died. And they took it away from her, even though that was hers. That was her property, and that rightfully belonged to her. And it wasn't the people's, it was just hers, Bibi Fatima.
I think the beauty of Bibi Fatima alayhi salam, it's unimaginable in everything that she has done for us. You know, the the fact that Bibi Fatima alayhi salam stood up for herself, that stood up and said that, and went to court and all that she went through. Um, you know, she didn't let herself get silent. She said that no, and she went with proof. Um, and that was her way of, fighting for herself, for her justice. Um, and it wasn't easy when we read the events today and that we'll be reading tomorrow. It's not easy during this time to of what she went through. Um, but she's so powerful. Even in her time that she was oppressed, she was so powerful. Her words resonated, in today's history that we read today in our majalises. And we have to learn from there that fear. Don't fear the people just because they have some power over you, or they want to seem higher than you. Don't fear that, because the highest power is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So that if you know that you are on his path, if you know that you are following what he has stated, what he has said in the Quran and in the Hadith, but never fear anything, and inshallah you will get what you deserve and what was your right. And today, still, we all know that Fatima alayhi salam, that fadak is hers, and no matter what, till the day till in the day of judgment, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will judge everybody, we will see the truth, inshallah, that how the right that was taken away will be given to her, because no matter what happens, the rights will always remain yours, no matter how far they are, no matter how near they are. And I think that we should learn from Bibi Fatima alayhi salam that don't fear. As long as you have Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and you're following his path, you can do anything, and it'll stay, and the oppression of yours will be remembered to the day of the judgment, until the day of the judgment, to the end of the world, and that you're immortal.
Yeah, to add on to what Sister Wajia said, I think there's a lot of stuff in this world that we stress too much about. Like Bibi Fatima could have made through a fit. She could have gotten angry about how she wasn't given her land, but instead she was patient, and because she knew about Allah's mercy. And I think we should all know that a lot of the stuff in our dunya, in this dunya, is like something that you can just, if you think about it, you just can just leave it on Allah. You can just tell Allah, this is your matter. You can take care of this, and don't stress yourself about it, because at the end of the day, Allah is gonna serve justice, no matter what it is.
Yeah, and even when the 12th Imam comes, one of the first things he's going to do is, of course, first he's going to take revenge of Imam Hussein alayhi salam, and then he's going to, take revenge on Bibi Fatima, salam alayha, and of course, all the injustice was done to her. So that's when, when our 12th Imam, may Allah hasten his appearance, when he comes. Yes. So we talked about all the different things, and another example of, you know, did I hear that? Being silent during, oppression. Like we were mentioning, Bibi Fatima Saleh, she was very vocal throughout everything that happened, even realizing these were her own people, the people, the companions of Prophet Muhammad, who were now, turning against her. She was very vocal about it, and like you mentioned, she was very patient. And that's how, like you said, that's how we should act in everything that's going on with us. Um, in terms of, all the different injustice going on in the world. In Janatul Baki, one of the main examples. But what can we do about it? We have to do, what we can do. If we can tell somebody about it, if we can, do whatever we can, if we can, listen to a lecture on it, just try to inform ourselves, try to be aware, and try to tell people. So at least Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows that we tried, that we did something, and we weren't silent while everything went on, while all of this injustice is going on in the world. And one example you see of this is with the people of Saleh. Did I already say this? Or is this the people of Saleh?
I don't think
No.
you
Okay,
did.
good. Yeah, okay, good. So What happened with the people of Saleh? As we all know, that there was the camel that Prophet Saleh gave, to the people, because they said they wanted to see a miracle. So he gave them, a camel. And the people didn't like this camel. So what they decided one day to do was that they were going to go kill the camel. Against, of course, what he said to do, because this was a miracle, but they still wanted to kill the camel. So what ended up happening was, the people who decided to kill the camel, when they killed the camel, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala didn't just kill, a few people. He didn't just kill the person who actually killed the camel. He punished everyone. And why did he punish everyone? He punished everyone because the people, even the people who, stood by and watched it happen, they knew that something was going to happen. They knew, that maybe their herd, somebody's going to go kill the camel. But they didn't do anything about it. And it doesn't matter that maybe they had second thoughts about it. Maybe they thought, hey, that's not the right thing to do. This is a miracle. Prophet ﷺ said not to do it. Maybe they didn't want to do it. But they ended up not saying anything about it. And as a result, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ended up punishing everyone.
Yeah, being a bystander, you think that it's just a harmless act, but it really does affect the situation. Like, for example, if all the people who were standing there said something or said that, hey, think about what you're doing, they might have been a second thought. And then maybe also Fatima would have given Hadayat or shown mercy to the people, but instead, that didn't happen. Everyone just was quiet, and it happened what happened. And again, silence is the biggest oppressor that anyone can deal with.
Yes, of course. That's the biggest thing that, people, you could have. That's, like we said, that's the difference between making an impact and doing nothing. Is somebody, you could just say one thing and it'll make a huge difference. So that's the example we saw from Bibi Fatima salam alaiha. And of course, all the Ahlul Bayt, they all went through their own, oppression. They were all oppressed. And even you go to the other example of Imam Ali alayhi salam, how he was oppressed. He was supposed to become, the successor, but they, took it away from him. So, they were all oppressed, but the way that they handled it, that's the lesson that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wanted to show us. Because, of course, they use them as the example. They use, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put down the Quran and He put down the Ahlul Bayt as the example. So we see the way they acted with things. We saw how they acted, and we implement that into our own lives. Well, I think that's all the time we have left for today's program. Would anyone else like to add anything?
I think the main the main takeaway you can take from this episode or this segment would be that you should always stand up for what's right and stand up with truth, because I feel like Islam is one of the basis of Islam, and one of our duties in Islam, one of our pillars of Islam actually, is to stand up for what's right and stand with the good and don't disassociate yourself with the bad. And so what I think the main takeaway should be is that you should just always just follow the truth, or follow the most clear truth you see, and never don't fall into what what other people want you to do, or what society wants from you. You should always just follow the truth and follow what Allah has commanded you.
Yeah, and to be aware of yourself, be aware of your surroundings. Make sure that you're not part of the oppression as well. Make sure that you're not just a bystander as well. Be sure to voice your opinions. Voice what the truth is. Don't be afraid. Yeah, you'll get a beating from a bully, but at least you stood up for the truth, and people admire you for that and call you a hero. Rather than a villain. At the end of the day, oppression is painful. Oppression is horrible, but don't be part of it. Be the person who fights against it.
And of course, not saying anything about oppression, staying silent, like we mentioned, is just as bad as the person doing the oppression. Like we mentioned that saying from Imam Ali alayhi salam, The oppressor and the oppressed will both suffer in the hereafter, the oppressor for his tyranny and the oppressed for accepting it. So that's today's program. Thank you for everyone who joined us and watched this program. Thank you, Sister Wajiha, Brother Hadi, Brother Hussein.
You're welcome.
So, inshallah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can help us to understand everything, understand and take away and learn the lessons from Bibi Fatima salam alaiha. Today is, of course, her Shahadat. So, inshallah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can help us to learn the lessons from her, see everything that we have to do, and implement that into our own life. See the way that how she handled oppression. See how patient she was, and see all of her qualities, and put that into our own situations, whatever that may be. Whether it's on a big scale or a small scale, whether it's the oppression going on in with in Pakistan or Palestine, or it's somebody says something mean, or if it's even in your own house, somebody says something mean to you, someone's unfair to you, it can be a huge difference. And even like we mentioned, standing up and yeah, even standing up and doing one thing, it could have a domino effect, and it could affect everyone. Even saying one thing to your family could make a huge difference. So inshallah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us the tawfiq to learn more about Bibi Fatima salam alaiha's life. Now inshallah we're going to do Allahumma kulli waliyika for the safety and protection of our 12th Imam, and inshallah we're all helpers of our 12th Imam. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Allahumma kulli waliyaka al-Hujjat ibn al-Hasan salawatuka alayhi wa ala bai fi hadhihi as-sa'a wa fi kulli as-sa'a waliyan wa hafidha wa qaidan wa nasira wa dhalila wa aina حتى تسكنه أرضك طوعا وتمتعه فيها طويلا برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد. Once again, thank you for everyone who participated in our program. Please join us next time. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Khuda Hafiz.